let's go back to week 2 on this episode of Quick Slant from the Daytona Beach News Journal and the St. Augustine Record. I'm Chris Vinel. I apologize if I sound or look a little sick. I am. But Chris Boyle, my buddy here, and the expert is going to carry me through this like every other week. You can follow me at Chris A. Vinel on Twitter. You can follow Chris Boyle at Chris Boyle DBNJ on Twitter, and make sure you're keeping up with everything we've got going on the website, on social media, because we've got you covered pretty much every day, especially on Fridays. Let's talk about not Friday night football, but Monday night football. I mentioned week 2. We had a week 2 matchup that was brought back to life in week 5 here. Mainland and Flagler Palm Coast, with Mainland getting a dub in the rescheduled game on Monday.
Yeah, it was a really fun game. It was exactly what you'd hoped it would be. It was physical. It was attritional. It was a game that was described by Travis Rowland, the Bucs head coach, as a street fight. Like it was strategic, and you saw a lot of good from both teams. I mean, definitely a contrast in styles. DeMarcus Creasy rebounded from an early interception, was very efficient in the passing game, threw for almost 300 yards, a couple of touchdowns as well. And then you also saw Flagler's running game was very good at times. You know, Marcus Mitchell was certainly the player that Mainland zeroed in on, but when Dennis Murray started running in the second half and they got him more involved, they became a bit more multi-dimensional. Murray was injured for a big stretch of that game in the second half, and that really, I think, helped. It definitely cost Flagler a chance to win the game. It was just a little bit of a struggle for them to put the pressure on and maybe add some points to a lead they had.
Still, I mean, it's fun to have 2 of the local heavyweights going at it like that. Both of them have spent time at number 1 in the power rankings each week, and we'll talk about who the new number 1 is here in a minute. But let's go to Flagler Palm Coast and Mainland's matchups this week. They don't really get much of a break between games. They're actual week 5 games, not their week 2 reschedules.
Yep.
Mainland has Lake Mineola and Flagler Palm Coast has University. Yeah,
a resurgent University at that. They've won 2 games in a row. They beat Pine Ridge easily on Friday, and you know this is a game that was supposed to happen last year, got rained out. So I think that University is definitely going to want an opportunity to test its mettle against Flagler, and vice versa. Mainland goes to Lake Mineola, a game that really kick-started their year last year. They were a little bit on the bubble as far as the playoff race was concerned, because Jones was the favorite in the district, but they beat Lake Mineola 35-6. And kind of got their mojo back, I think, there. And they were able to win that game and then make the playoffs for the 28th straight year. I do favor both of these teams, even on a little bit of short rest with some fatigue. I think both of these teams can still win on Friday, even though it's going to be a bit more of a challenge than it would any other week.
And I would give you a drum roll if I could for the new number 1 in the power rankings. But Bartram Trail, your new number 1, they've got St. Augustine. And it's, you know, that Bartram Trail defense and rushing attack versus the young guns of St. Augustine. What are you watching there?
Well, Bartram is a deserved number 1. They're 4-0. They've been unbelievable on defense when it's mattered. They're coming off of back-to-back games in which they've allowed a total of 10 points to Lincoln and Mainland, 2 very good teams. And yeah, I think that running game on both sides of this is going to be important. Devontae Lyons, can he get going? Can St. Augustine open some holes against what's been a really tough Bartram defensive line led by Shane Armstrong and Arian Stith? And on the flip side of that, you know, stopping Riley Trujillo and Lathan Biddle, a really potent 1-2 punch for Bartram Trail, where Trujillo's able to pull it and run and pick up big chunk yards. Biddle can certainly hit a hole and go downhill. They have Nigel Cook-Williams for a little bit of the speed element too. So, you know, Bartram's really tough to slow down in this running game. They're averaging well over 200 yards per game, and it will be the biggest task for St. Augustine to find the football and to bring guys down. Let's
go a little bit more north. Creekside and Mandarin. Creekside was impressive last week.
They were. They took Buchholz into deep water, more so than I think most of us expected, given how good of a team Buchholz is. But Creekside played a tremendous second half. They were extremely dynamic. They ran it well. They threw it well. They did just about everything aside from, winning the ball game. And I think you almost gain a little bit more respect for them. They were 3-0 coming into the year, and they beat some pretty good teams along the way. But considering that Buchholz has legitimate championship aspirations, Creekside's got to come away from that game, I think, with a ton of confidence, considering how many guys that they've replaced throughout the roster this year, to be able to go in there and challenge a team that's near the top of the pile in their classification. So I think they will come out of this, and this is one of the toughest districts in the state too. Going into this week, the 5 teams in that district are 16-3. So that is going to be an every week battle down the stretch just to make the playoffs.
DeLand and Seabreeze, 2 teams that, maybe they're not off to the start that they want to be. Seabreeze still looking for their first win. DeLand is 1-2. What are you watching there? What's kind of the separator there?
Well, I think it's who comes out of the bye week better. Who's sharper right out of the gate. Seabreeze's offense has really struggled in first halves this year. They've had some moments in second halves of ball games. Definitely the Spruce Creek game and Bartram Trail game come to mind. But they've started slow and dug themselves into some big holes. And for DeLand, it's about trying to get that rhythm and that timing in this single wing offense. They really want to start clicking because their biggest game of the year is next week against Spruce Creek to open district play. A game I think probably will decide who wins that district. So they need to get going and to start kind of showing teams that they can what they're about and that they can operate to the level of efficiency that's required to win the district.
Let's wrap it up with some quick fire.
Let's do it. Let's ride.
Each side, brand new guys, brand new school, brand new team, going for 3 wins in a row. Do they get it this week?
I didn't think we'd be here just because you expect a new school to have some hiccups and to have some struggles, some growing pains. Yes, I think they're going to win. I think I'm taking Beachside to beat a Ridgeview team that just gave up 60 last week to Tokoi Creek. I think this is a much more competitive, feisty team than maybe we expected it to be. They can throw it. They've got players that they've already shown they can win some games in tight situations. So I like the idea that they can go in and get it done, and it would be quite a feather in the cap for Pete Duffy and his players if they can go 3-1 out of the gate.
You can book it. Chris Boyle is riding with Beachside. Let's go.
Yeah.
Matanzas and Atlantic. That was the toughest game of the week to pick for me. I had no clue where to go with this one. And, it's a little bit of a different story than this game would be because Matanzas is without their quarterback, Daquan Evans, who's a pretty good player. And Atlantic has some dudes over there with John Killingsworth and their rushing attack and everything else. What's the separator there? Who do you pick, and what's the separator?
I think the availability of the quarterback's a big thing. Killingsworth is one of the state's leading rushers. He's the number 1 rusher in the state, according to Max Preps going into last week, and he popped off a big run against Deltona, 74 yards. And I think overall, if Evans is out again with that collarbone injury, then I think it's going to be a really tough deal for them to try to match scores potentially with Atlantic. Atlantic knows what they want to be. Unlike last year, they know what they're about, and they're doing it pretty well. They're running it effectively. They're running it with power. They've got 2 guys they really like in Killingsworth and Kwasi Kwaku. I think Atlantic's going to win. I have them winning at home in a very close game. But for one thing, let's give some flowers to Cole Hash from Matanzas. He's been really, really strong on defense, and even in games where it's gotten out of hand, he's just continued to make plays all year long.
He's even played a little bit of, at least last week against Flagler Palmcosi, played a little bit of quarterback.
Right.
And another note on Killingsworth, he's been leading the area and rushing all year, and so definitely a tough guy to stop. I'm getting away from the quick hitters because I'm interjecting too much. I'll shut up here. Deltona, 5-0. We're trying to get to 5-0 this week. Do they get there?
I think they get there, and I don't think it's particularly close. Liberty hasn't scored this year. Deltona will certainly be a bit more alert considering that they struggled in the first half against Atlantic. I expect that they'll go out there and take care of business, which sets up a really intriguing game next week against Seabreeze, who, for all intents and purposes, kept them out of the playoffs a year ago in an overtime game. So if they win that and then get to 6-0, that would match the best start in the history of the program.
Nice and, big-time quarterback recruit Marcus Stokes still winless this year. They're at Orange Park this week. Will they get their first win?
they've been in some close games. Like, it's not like they're 0-4, but they've been in some tight games against some pretty good teams. I think they're a significantly better team than Orange Park. I think this is an opportunity where Stokes and his skill players can definitely pick up, put up some points, put up some stats, and right the ship. You got to remember, they're replacing 10 starters on defense. That is a tough deal for the Panthers this season. So if they can get one, and then all of a sudden things can really kind of rebound. Everything's still to play for them. They still have Flagler, Palm Coast, and Ponte Vedra on the schedule. They're 2 district games. If they win them both, they'll be in the playoffs anyway. But it starts with building some confidence, I think, right out of the gate here against Orange Park.
That's been our quick hitters, and this has been Quick Slant. Thanks again for tuning in, and we'll see you next week.